Hi everybody, welcome to Racing English. We have some exciting things going on at Racing English. We now have a new backdrop and now Racing English shirts, and we have some very exciting things going on at the moment, and hopefully we'll have some big announcements coming in the next few months. So now let's get started. Last weekend was the NASCAR Sprint Cup race at Bristol, and Carl Edwards won the race. He was the only Joe Gibbs racing car that did not suffer a tire failure. Every one of his teammates had at least one issue, if not two or three. It was a rough day for Joe Gibbs Racing as a whole, but they were still able to get the win. They're at the moment the strongest team in the Sprint Cup series, and it'll be interesting to see if they can maintain that form throughout the rest of the year. Sunday was a day for the underdogs. Trevor Bayne finished 5th. It was his first top 5 since he won the Daytona 500 back in 2011. And Matt DiBenedetto finished 6th in the BK racing car. His previous best finish was 18th at Talladega. That just goes to show you how important starting on the outside was. He was basically he was able to stay on the lead lap for the whole race, and in all the late race restarts he was able to start on the outside and got him up to 6th place by the end of the day. It was a great run for that team. And also last weekend was the Formula One race in China. Nico Rosberg won the race, continuing his strong form, winning his 6th race in a row. In fact, that's actually the longest streak either Mercedes teammate has had over each other. The longest streak Lewis Hamilton had over Rosberg was 5 races in a row, and now Nico is at the top of his game. And he says that by no means is it over. Lewis Hamilton's a very strong driver, and it's going to be a fight all the way down to the final race. But at the moment, Nico Rosberg certainly has the upper hand. And also Red Bull had their best run of the year with a 3rd place finish. It was their first podium of the year, and they followed up their front row run in qualifying. For it seems like Red Bull they have one of the best cars out there. It's just the engine is still very down on horsepower. Also last weekend was the opening round of the World Endurance Championship, and Audi won the race, but they were disqualified post-race. Audi blamed their car setup. It was too softly sprung, so whenever it would go over bumps, it would bounce up and down, and it ground down the bottom of the car, and it broke some regulation having to do with the underside of the race car. With the Audi's disqualification, Porsche inherited the win, and that continues their run of victories from last year. They were very dominant last year, but the good news is it looks like it's going to be much closer this year. Last weekend was the Pirelli World Challenge race at Long Beach. Johnny O'Connell got the win, but was given a penalty post-race, and that handed Alvaro Parente his first Pirelli World Challenge win. He qualified on the pole in the K-Pax McLaren, and has been the strongest of the McLarens all year, and finally got a win. Also at Long Beach was the IndyCar series, and it was certainly the cleanest race at Long Beach I've ever seen out of an IndyCar race. The race went caution-free, and it was relatively strung out, but most of the controversy came from the late in the race when Simon Pagenaud cut the blend line to get to exiting pit road, and that infringement gave him the lead, and he was able to hold on for the rest of the race. And this was an important moment for the new IndyCar race control stewards. That's now, instead of one guy making the calls, it's a panel of 3 race car drivers that make the decisions. And apparently they specifically said that there would not be any warnings this year, but they gave him a warning for it. So unfortunately, they've lost their credibility immediately at their first chance to make a big call. And in the wake of this race, they've implemented basically an electronic blend line. The transponder, I think how it works is they have a timing line that goes down the blend line, and the transponder of the car has to go outside of that blend line. It'll be implemented immediately at this weekend at Barber, and hopefully it'll clamp down on that. I think they should add a cone. I think a cone would be a much simpler solution if they just put a cone at the end of the blend line, and it would force drivers to go around that. It would make the situation pretty much black and white, but for some reason they decided to just leave it up to the drivers, and sure enough, they were taking advantage. One of the bigger stories of last weekend was the NASCAR Xfinity race at Bristol. Eric Jones was able to steal the race from Kyle Larson and Kyle Busch in a late race restart. And it's the first win for an Xfinity regular this year. And with that win, Eric Jones won the $100,000 Dash for Cash bonus. The win in the main event was followed up by his win in the heat race and qualifying and the fastest time in qualifying. This race was a big race because it was the first time NASCAR had ever used heat races. And honestly, the heat races themselves were pretty much a dud. The races were quite boring because the heat races don't pay points, so everyone was being careful to make sure they made it to the main event. And that's exactly what happened. And I wasn't particularly impressed with the heat races, but there was some good that came out of them, because with the heat races, it included a shorter main event. And I think that is the direction NASCAR needs to go. What turns most fans away from NASCAR is the length of the races. I think and it showed in the race that it was a 200 lap race instead of a 300 lap race, and that was the most exciting Xfinity race I've ever seen at Bristol. I don't think it's a coincidence, and I think it should pave the way for NASCAR to start implementing shorter races. If I were in charge, I would have 300-mile Sprint Cup races, 250-mile Xfinity races, and 200-mile truck races. And I'd leave the big Sprint Cup races alone, like Daytona 500, Coke 600, Southern 500, Brickyard 400, stuff like that. Thank you very much for watching. Please check out my Racing English Facebook page and also racingenglish.com. I got a good feeling about what Racing English has going on in our own racing. I think exciting things are on the horizon, and I'm expecting it to get real good real fast. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.